and welcome to Reporters, in-depth France 24 reporting from around the world. Today, we're taking you to Crimea, the peninsula in the Black Sea, today an autonomous part of Ukraine. There have been big changes there since the breakup of the Soviet Union, including the return of exiled Crimean Tatars. There are people who were deported en masse by Stalin during the Second World War, and for decades the Tatars were forced to live in exile in Siberia and Central Asia. Now, around 250,000 Tatars are back in Crimea. They've headed home to their ancestral land. But the return has been far from easy. Many Tatars live in poverty and say they face discrimination. While our reporters Claire de Buizet and Lydie Marlin went to find out more.
Makeshift houses hidden from the street. A little-known side of Crimea. This is where 82-year-old Rushdie lives. He's retired and now spends all his time working on his future home.
You see here, there will be a wall, and here, there will be something like a bathroom. I will have a toilet and a bath. You'll be able to wash your hands.
Rushdie started this project 6 years ago, but with only €150 a month to live off, he doesn't have the means to see it through.
If I just had a roof, for example, this house would be like gold for me.
He's forced to live in abject poverty while waiting for better days. He stays here alongside 47 families in this shanty town without water or electricity. All of them are Crimean Tatars, and all of them say they have one reason for their difficult situation: deportation. For Rushdie, it was May 1944, when he was 13 years old.
It was the 18th of May, at night time. I can't tell you the exact time, but it was night. Everyone was sleeping. The soldiers banged on the door, shouting, "Wake up, mother, take your children. You have 15 minutes to get your things. These are Stalin's orders."
At the end of the Second World War, the Russian Soviets were looking for total control of the Crimea and wanted the Tatars out. So they accused them of being Nazi collaborators.
When we were in the lorries, we were stopped near the cemetery. I don't know if they received the order to kill us or to bury us there. I don't know. All I remember is that we stopped first at the cemetery. And at that point, we were all crowded into the truck. The old people were really shocked. Tears were rolling down their faces. When they realized we were being deported, they began to sing the song Ural Dari. It's a Tatar song, a tragic song. That was the first time I heard it. In the truck, we were taken away, and it's still in my head.
That night, 200,000 Tatars were deported more than 4,000 kilometers away from their homes, to the east of the USSR. Almost half of them would not survive. The Tatars had to wait more than 40 years and the fall of the USSR to return home. Crimea is now part of the Ukraine, but Moscow's influence can still be felt at the corner of each street. Lenin's statue still stands on the main square. Crimea's inhabitants are predominantly Orthodox Russian. Tatars are Muslims and make up only 12% of the overall population. However, they are still a long way from returning to their previous status. More than half of them are unemployed. Like Ali, an inhabitant of Kerbenkoy. Every morning she works in her garden to feed her family. Ali was born in Uzbekistan during the exile. She worked as a sales manager in a shop, but since she arrived in Crimea, she says she feels like a second-class citizen.
It's very difficult for Crimean Tatars to find a decent job, because the first thing that they ask you when we respond to a job announcement is our nationality. They ask us, "What is your nationality?" If they find out you're a Tatar, they say, "Sorry, we don't need anyone." And they say they've already employed someone else.
Night falls on Kurban Koy. Evenings can be long in this shanty town. One of the only comforts for Ali and her neighbours can be found in the warmth of a coffee. These people were never able to recover the land taken from their parents by the Soviets. Now they're forced to stay wherever they can and be prepared to fight for it.
We were threatened with expulsion all the time.
I was ordered to pay a fine of almost 10,000 euros. They brought the police here, and also Cossacks with dogs. We've had all sorts of threats, people who are even afraid just to go into town.
The Tatars are often targets for racist abuse. Evidence can be found at the Myane cemetery outside Simferopol. On the left, the Russian Christian graves lie intact. On the right, the Tatar Muslim cemetery has already been desecrated 3 times this year. So far, there have been few arrests.
Fortunately for us, the graves of our loved ones are in good condition. But when I look over there, it makes me feel sick. Why would they do that? Allah will punish them. Even if we don't find them, Allah will punish them.
They should pay for this. We need to settle things with these people.
Sometimes the situation overflows into violence. Like in Bakshi Share in 2006, when Russian traders decided to set up their stalls on the site of an old Tatar cemetery. Tatars bearing flags arrived and demanded that their holy site be respected. The face-off became a riot. There are a number of so-called Cossacks amongst the Russian traders. The Tatars say this nationalistic group is responsible for fueling hatred between the communities. We met them in Sebastopol at their headquarters. Today they're commemorating the 92nd anniversary of the departure of the Cossacks from the Crimea, a show of force for this nationalistic, orthodox, paramilitary group who count around 20,000 members across the Crimea.
Cossacks of Sebastopol, Cossacks of Taurid, we Cossacks have no limit. We feel at home everywhere. Long live the Cossacks!
The Cossacks want to reaffirm the presence of Russians in Crimea and their domination over other creeds. In front of the cameras, they're careful not to be openly hostile towards the Tatars.
Personally, as a member of the Cossacks and as a citizen of Ukraine and Crimea, I ask myself the question: if someone is monopolizing the land to build houses, etc., I want to ask the authorities, why let them do it and not us?
When asked directly about the Tatars, Yurchenko preferred not to answer himself. Instead, a communications officer gave the party line.
I can say the following. According to official statistics, the Tatars and their families own 113% of the available land. In addition, the land that we gave to them, and which is far from the sea, does not interest them. There's been a recent trend of Tatars who have taken land and then sold it on to others.
Land has been given to Tatars by authorities, but it's often land in remote areas, places where Tatars have never lived in the past. Many prefer to occupy empty buildings near big cities. They say it's their right as compensation for the deportations. But the Russians say these claims are exaggerated. The situation has put a lot of pressure on Mustafa Dzhemilev, the only elected Tatar in Ukrainian parliament. Tatar interests often clash with those of their Russian counterparts.
The overwhelming majority of Russians living in Crimea have completely different political aspirations to us. Their vision of Crimea is quite different. Not only are they educated in the spirit of anti-Tatar propaganda, but now they see us as political opponents, because we are against the detachment of Crimea from Ukraine and against being annexed to Russia. We stand for the renewal of our national culture and the reconstruction of our identity.
This reconstruction starts with education. Tatar may be one of the official languages of Crimea, but it isn't taught at most schools. Sovietsky's school number 3 is an exception. Here, everything is done to ensure children understand Tatar culture. During the Soviet-era exile, speaking Tatar was forbidden. The result has been that most children do not understand the language of their ancestors. In this Tatar literature class, students are discovering some forgotten words.
Our duty as teachers is to teach this language, and it's difficult. They're completely new to it. It saddens me that we have to teach our own mother tongue as if it was a foreign language.
These students started their education in a Russian school, where they say they felt stigmatized. The Sovietsky school has become a refuge for them.
Here I feel a lot better because no one hits me. Nobody pushes me. Everyone is very nice. And all the students here are Tatars.
Here it's calmer and nobody bothers me. In the other schools, there were bigger students who sometimes bothered me. Over there, they don't like Tatars.
Thanks to schools like these, Tatar children can reconnect with their national identity. But these kinds of initiatives are relatively rare due to a lack of government funds. In returning to Crimea, Ali, Rushdie and the others have realized the dreams of their parents. They have no regrets. Integration difficulties have still managed to slow the wave of returns. There remain almost 100,000 Tatars living in their countries of exile.
I'm joined now by the journalists behind that report, Claire Dubuisset and Lydie Marlin. Good to have you both with us. We saw in your film there the viewpoint of a nationalist group in Ukraine. But what's the reaction been like from the general population in Crimea to the return of the Tatars?
Bien sûr, la majorité des
Russes, the majority of the Russians in Crimea are not as hostile as the Tatars, as the report showed. But the feeling we perceived is that there is a certain amount of resentment against the Tatars, that they are asking for too much. It must be said that the economic situation in Ukraine is not good right now, and the population of Crimea already has a feeling that they have problems and that people don't deal with them, and that the claims of the Tatars are heard very much. One must say also that the Tatars suffer from a negative image because there's a lack of knowledge in Crimea of their history and their culture. In schools, for instance, the history of the deportation is summarized in a few sentences in the history books. And the population has the general feeling that the Tatars are traitors, they collaborated with the Nazis, and that idea is found sometimes in an extreme form when you see desecration of Tatar monuments on which you find swastikas.
I see. And how is the Ukrainian government handling the Tatars' return? Claire, perhaps you want to take that one?
Alors, les Tatars en Crimée, c'est à peu près 12% de la
Tatars in Crimea are about 12% of the population, so about 0.5% of the population of Ukraine. It is not a priority of the Ukrainian government, but there is a budget allocated to the Tatars to give them housing and land. But the land very often is in remote areas, far from cities, where there is nothing to grow, and these are not the regions where they live did in the past. So that is why they're not really happy with that, and the reason why there are so many squats in Crimea. The budget has decreased constantly over the past years, especially since the arrival of President Yanukovych in 2010. And a few years ago, it was 120 million hryvnias for the Tatars. Last year, it was 10 million, and it will probably be twice divided by half next year.
OK, and Lydia, there's of course a big protest moment in Ukraine at the moment. Where do the Tatars stand in relation to that?
Well, very clearly, the Tatars are on the side of the European Union. During the demonstrations in Kiev, people saw a few Tatar flags amongst the demonstrators. And in Simferopol, the capital, they decided to organize their own demonstrations in support of the Kiev demonstrators with posters saying that they wish integration into the European Union, because for them, integrating the European Union means being able to fight the Russian influence that they fear.
All right, thank you very much. We'll have to leave it there. That's Claire de Buizet and Lydie Marland there. Thanks to you at home for watching Reporters. Do tune in again at the same time next week for more.